Hello everyone, welcome to the latest Noir series of short author interviews with authors that we like. My name is Nick Quantrill. I'm one of the festival co-directors and author of the Joe Garrity series set in my home city of Hull. And our guest today is Neil Lancaster, author of the Scottish police procedural novel Dead Man's Grave. How's it going, Neil?
It's going really well, thanks, Nick.
Excellent, good to hear from you. And I want to start at the beginning with this novel because I think probably this year it's probably the strongest opening to a novel I've read in a long, long time. It's such a great hook and such a great setup where it's set in the remote Highlands, and our protagonist in this opening chapter goes out to this really remote graveyard and he finds the grave that is never to be opened. Tell us a bit about that, because I think it comes from a true story. Effectively, it takes its sort of inspiration from something that happened to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all kicked off in Christmas 2019. We'd been invited. We got some good friends who were coming over from all over the world to have a big Christmas in Scotland, and they invited us down to this place, this big like manor house in Pitlochry, a couple of hours south of me, and a tremendous place. And there's a big group of people there, and I got chatting to a guy there, real old fella, knocking 80, who had lived most of 50, 60 years in New Zealand and Australia, but he sounded to me as if he'd only just left Scotland 5 minutes ago. Yeah, the biggest West Coast accent, a tremendous character, and he was telling me he'd read my previous book, because up till then I'd been happily writing my Noir series. Yeah. Which I was really pleased with. I really love. I still love. I'd really like to write some more one day. But I'd sort of finished the last of the Novax, and I was going ready to get editing it and everything. And he was saying, "Oh, I really like, I like your first two books. What are you doing next?" And then he said the words that, as authors we all hear, "I've got a great idea." Now we all know what we normally do. We go, "Okay, yeah." But so I went, I'd had a few as it is, and I said, "Okay, John, yeah, great." And he goes, "Well, I was up in." Years and years ago, in the 1960s, I was in Caithness with my wife, and we were researching her family. And I found this graveyard. He goes, this tumble down graveyard. There's no chapel. There's nothing. It's just a mound, and it's in the middle of a sheep field. He goes, and it's miles and miles and miles from anywhere. And I found this little walled, tumble down graveyard. And I'm looking through, and I'm carving up all the moss from this stone, looking to see if it's anything to do with my wife's family. And it was a blank stone that only had the words on it, "This grave never to be opened." And he goes, "Do you think that's a story in that?" And I went, "Yeah, have you told anyone else?" And he goes, no, I've sort of forgotten about it. He goes, "But it's just, when I read the books," because he was a huge Ian Rankin fan, Stuart McBride, Val, he loves them all. He was a huge fan. And he goes, "Do you think that's a story?" And I go, "Yeah, not half. There's definitely something in that." And of course, my previous books have had a foot in Scotland, but they've never been Scottish books. They've been action thrillers that have been based anywhere and everywhere. A lot happening in London and loads happening in Sarajevo, and real international flavour to them. But then I thought, I want to write a Scottish crime thriller. I've been living in Scotland for a number of years now, and Scotland is very much home to me. I don't like going outside Scotland if I can avoid it, but it's really home. And I thought, I feel part of the furniture now. I want to write this book. But then I thought, well, how do I use that? How do I use this? What is effectively a brilliant meme? It's a poster, it's what is it? It's not a story.
It's not 90,000 words, is it, to start with?
It's not. It is just however many words it is, 6 words. And I thought, how do I? And I thought, well, it would work great for historical, but that's not me. If you wanted to write a pandemic thriller, that's a great start point. But no, not now, not at the moment. And I just don't think it's me. So I thought, well, how do I make this a contemporary crime thriller? And I want to, use the things. And I thought, well, I want to make it Scottish, very Scottish. But I don't want it to be necessarily a dark thriller. I want it to be a fast-paced action thriller. So can I give it, the way I sort of tried to sell it to an agent was, it's going to be tart noir, but with the heartbeat of a full-on thriller. And that's what I tried to do. So I came up with this concept about the consequences of opening the grave that should never have been opened. And the book just evolved, and I started writing. I came up with the idea that it would begin. I saw the opening sequence of this old, sick gangster, the top of the Scottish crime tree, possibly influenced by Arthur Thompson, who was, the sort of notorious Glaswegian gangster of the 60s, 70s. And I thought, and I just had that picture in my mind of this old guy stumbling across this graveyard and looking for some family history because of some old wrong that he felt he wanted to right, and just something that had been passed down the generations. And I thought, well, how about that we have a feud from the 1830s is reignited in the 21st century? And I thought, that's a grabber. I like that. And that's where I came from. And that's how I arrived at the concept of Dead Man's Grave. Yeah. Or, I called it Blood Feud when I wrote it, which I thought was quite good. But, you get it to a publisher and they have their ways in, as a marketing exercise and how they want to run it. And so obviously they came up with that, which is great. So that was it. Yeah. And in my normal way, I didn't plot it particularly well. I came up with some ideas. I came up with my main character, Max Craigie. I wanted him to be a bit of an outsider in Scotland.
Let's have a talk about him, because you said that it wasn't actually going to be, was it never going to be a Novak novel? It always felt like it had to be a brand new, you had to kind of get a new detective for this story. This was a fresh start in that sense. Yeah,
it needed to be something new. It needed to be something different. Novaks were very much, I was more for Novak books. I was influenced by Greg Hurwitz with his Orphan X series, Tom Wood with his Victor series. They were the sort of books, and I guess a bit of Lee Child, Jack Leach, maybe a bit of that crept in. I wanted this to be different, and so I needed a new character. I needed a whole new canvas, really. And I thought I could probably have squeezed a Novak into it, but I thought it might have felt a bit forced, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit then about Max, DS Max Craigie, because he's tasked into, when this gangster you've talked about at the grave kind of goes missing, obviously, at the beginning of the novel, when the blood feud is reignited, and Max is kind of tasked with essentially finding him before we discover that he's dead. That's not giving anything away, I don't think, to readers. So,
no, not at all.
Yeah, so tell us a bit about Max, because he's a London detective returning to the hand, simply making a fresh start. So I guess that's playing on your own background as well, to a degree, into that sense of, of an outsider in the area. Your protagonist in the story.
Absolutely. I wanted him to be an outsider, but not entirely. I wanted the feeling that he's coming home. There was some baggage from what's happened in the past, because back when he was in London, he was on the flying squad and he shot and he killed someone in a raid. And, there's a lot of hangovers from that, and he felt he needed a fresh start. So he's come to Scotland, and he's a Scot. He was brought up on, I made him a Black Isler, because I live on the Black Isle, and it's nice to.
I know,
and it's nice to put a pin in the map as well. I really like putting a pin in the map and celebrating the area that I live in and love. And I wanted him to be a bit of an outsider. I didn't want him too troubled. There is some trouble there. He's a veteran. He was in Afghanistan. Again, these are all things I like to talk about because they're close to me. My son is a Royal Marine, and he's done a number of tours in the Middle East. So I really wanted to bring those things to it again, to give him some baggage, but not too much. He has PTSD, but it doesn't rule his life.
Yeah.
He manages it. He knows he shouldn't drink alcohol. He exercises is his medicine, and that's a nod to real life. There are many people out there with elements of PTSD in their life that live with it and manage it. And I wanted to touch on that because I didn't want it to be what defined him. So he's an outsider. He's a newbie in Police Scotland, and people are still a bit suspicious of it. So, he is starting from a point of disadvantage. And the fact that Tam Hardy has gone missing struck me as a nice way to introduce him. And it is that old thing you can do with some really great stories, is that you've got a small town mystery. So this guy's just gone missing. He's not dead or anything. We don't know what's happened to him. He's just gone missing. And where can that lead? What are the consequences of it? And how far can this go? And it obviously, we know, it uncovers an awful lot. It uncovers an awful lot of corruption that is sitting in the heart of the police in Scotland. in my book.
In your book, absolutely, we'll say that just in your book. Of course, Max he's not a learner, is he? He does have a team around him. And I was particularly struck by Janina, his sidekick. She's kind of very much the opposite to Max, isn't she? She's young female. She's on the fast track. She's not got down and dirty yet, actually, in a way that maybe Max has. Was that kind of a deliberate sort of like playing off the two characters against each other to try and create that sort of team ethos, I suppose?
Yeah, again, Janie Calder, who I love, and I've loved her more the more I've edited. You know, when my editor got involved, he was really keen that she be developed, and you know, his work was really, really crucial to bringing it up. Again, she's a bit of an outsider.
Yeah.
She's from a wealthy family, but she was orphaned young, brought up by an aunt, and basically was brought up in the public school system. So she's a little awkward. She's a little quirky. She likes really weird music. She's obsessively clean and tidy, but she's hugely smart and hugely brave and hugely resourceful. And it struck me that as things went, I found a connection with them, and I wanted them to have this real bond that would develop. And of course, I want it to develop on, because there are at least 2 more Max Craigie books to come. And, I want there to be an arc with their relationship. And it's really been fun to write and to develop. I mean, it's never going to be anything other than friendship, because, Max is a married man, even though there's a bit of stuff going on there, which, but yeah, it was really interesting to develop Janie. And I've really grown quite fond of her now. And I'm really enjoying her writing it as the series progresses now.
Yeah.
Because she is, she's super smart, she's super resourceful, and she's, incredibly dedicated and really quite brave. So she was terrific fun to write.
Yeah. Was it difficult? Was it more of a specific challenge writing those 2 couples together? Because, like I say, we have people like Rebus, don't we, with Rebus and Siobhan, Mike Craven, Nancy's got Gillian Poe, this kind of like sense of partnerships. Did you feel like you had to kind of create a pairing that stands out in a different way? You have to do something different to the other authors writing these type of things?
I didn't give it as much thought as perhaps I should have done. I wanted to write someone who was different than him, but also similar. So, points of difference, points of similar. I wanted them to complement each other, because, she's got a history degree. So she was able to come up with these great little revelations just that. And then, everyone would stare at her, go, well, how do you know that? And she'll be a bit embarrassed because, it was when I was at university, because there is still an enormous amount of suspicion amongst a lot of cops about fast track. A lot of people don't like it. They think that somehow it's not cricket, So yeah, it was a funny one. I knew I wanted him to have a sidekick, and I wanted her to be really worthy. I wanted it to be a female for a start, because, a huge 40%, I think, of cops are women now. And I didn't want her to be meek and mild. I wanted her to be forthright. I wanted her to speak her mind. But this sense of slight awkwardness, which I think makes her more fun to read about. And as she then develops and gains more confidence as the book goes on, I think maybe we'll get a better sense of her, and I think that will continue as the series continues.
Yeah, have you considered that arc of the characters over the trilogy of books that you're going to write, or maybe more than 3 books possibly as well? Is that just something that's going to develop organically, do you think, between them?
I haven't thought about specifics. My editor Finn he talks about this, and he says that these are things that can develop, and we can reveal more of her life. More of her background, because she's quite reticent, she's quite hesitant to share about herself. So I didn't think too hard about it when I was writing. I just wrote the characters as I saw them, and I really wanted to bring into, because some of the things when I look at, and particularly TV, when I watch TV shows, police TV shows, because of course I was a cop for 25 years, and I see how cops talk to each other, I sort of sit there thinking, I don't know cops talk to each other like that. When you spend, especially if you get on with someone and you've got a nice relationship with someone, very often from the moment you sit in a car together to the moment you get out of the car together, you're taking the piss out of each other. And it's just real life. And I really wanted to reflect that banter, because, there are other authors do it brilliantly. Denzel Myrick does it fantastically with DCI Daly and his sidekick, DS Brian Scott. Absolutely brilliant, really funny. And I did want to introduce some of that. And because some of my favorite books, Stuart McBride and everything, they bring this dark humor into their characters. And it's essential because that's what cops are like. There is this undercurrent of dark humor, which can sometimes be quite inappropriate to an outsider. But that you have to sometimes bring that little bit of levity to it so that you don't go crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because of what they're doing, because of what you're seeing in front of you.
Yeah,
absolutely. So how much of yourself is actually in Max as a character? Is that something that you've embraced? You sort of your background as a police officer, or is it something that you've deliberately tried to put to one side and then start afresh in that sense?
I mean, there's no part of Max that reflects me, none whatsoever. I mean, apart from the fact we're both ex-military and I was a cop, and we've both worked in that sort of arena of covert surveillance, all the sort of secret, sexy policing. We've both done that. But in terms of personalities, nothing. I'm nothing like him. He's very much a product of my imagination. Other characters you draw reference on, and but my protagonist, in the same way as Novak. I've no idea who Novak's based on. It's certainly not me. I'm nowhere near as hard as him, that's for sure, or resourceful or anything like that. And I'm much lazier. So yeah, my previous job makes life easy for me because of course I know what I'm talking about. I can write accurate police characters. I can write accurate police procedures. But of course, I did give myself a few headaches because the system in Scotland is quite different. And I made some mistakes that I had to correct when it came up through editing. I was talking about the coroner. There's no coroner in Scotland. It's all the procurator fiscal. So I've had to be careful with that because there are differences, but you can write your way around most of them. But what doesn't change is cops are cops, whether they're in Scotland or whether they're in London. And I work with, I did some joint work with Scottish cops when I was working in London, and they were just cops, they felt the same, they talked the same language, and there's just some little procedural differences, that's all.
Yeah, we touched on that, and then we're talking about research. Is it a case of you kind of have to kind of filter out the research for yourself? Because for someone like me as a writer, I'm kind of scrabbling around trying to find out enough about the police and how it works to kind of make it feel authentic. But for you, is it knowing too much? Is it almost kind of can be a drawback as a writer?
You really, that's a really good point. Because I've been did the job for 25 years, and the temptation is to throw lots of information in there. And it's, you can't do that because it can get, A, it can sound like you're showing off, and B, it can get a bit boring. And sometimes I do overwrite and I do over-explain. It's why I need a good editor. It is. The best description I ever heard around research or information like that is like an iceberg. You've got the tip of the iceberg, which is what you reveal. Below is all the information that underpins that. So yeah, it is important. I mean, I am obviously, as an ex-cop, I'm expected to write an authentic thriller, and I think I can probably pull it off. But it's about learning to write less rather than writing more, and that's what I do have to keep, an eye on what I do.
Yeah, no, that's true, perfectly true, because it has a very authentic feel, the novel. I think we're kind of utterly convinced that this is kind of how these type of work, the police work would operate, and officers would operate in this type of scenario. So yeah, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of that kind of knowledge you've got there. But I think the other big theme of the novel is corruption, isn't it? It's something that pervades the novel. But what I really liked about it is it's not just corruption in the sense of, it's not enforced by fists, it's enforced by kind of soft powers, because we touched upon Tam Hardy, the gangster at the beginning of the novel, searching for the grave and this blood feud that goes through the years. But then as we increasingly meet Tam's son, he's a private educated man, isn't he? He's kind of, his power is kind of words, isn't it, effectively, an influence. Is that something that kind of taps into your background as well? Is that kind of more of a realistic portrayal of corruption in your eyes?
I think so. I think so. I mean, corruption can take many forms. I mean, thankfully, it's really rare. I mean, during my 25 years, there were times when I had suspicions, but not often. There would be times when you'd think, when we were working on jobs, you'd say, we won't go to this particular police station because it might be a bit leaky. corruption is a theme I talk about a lot. The Novak books always had strong elements around corruption in them. Because the simple fact is major organized crime cannot function without corruption. It needs corrupt officials to deal with the money, to deal with customs, to deal with the law, to deal with banking, accounting, money laundering, all these sort of things. It's really, really essential. So I'm interested in the root to corruption. What makes a good, someone who starts out wanting to be a good person? Because not many cops join wanting to be bent. I mean, there's been elements of, that has happened in terms of people seeking to put someone in a position. So, an extended member of a gang being put in the police.
Duty, wasn't it, the last series?
Yeah, having like a sleeper, having like a cop put in as a sleeper. It has happened. But it can be something really, really simple. It can be, in terms of corruption, it's you've only got to step that far over the line with someone like Tam Hardy, and he's got you. He owns you. So taking 200 quid off him in, 1982, which is sort of where I was thinking of, can land you someone 20, 30 years later who is incredibly influential. And the analogy I've used in the book is you plant enough acorns, one day you'll grow an oak. And I think it's really interesting. I mean, corruption, the process of corruption, the route to corruption, how it happens, why it happens, does interest me. Because they're not always inherently bad people. They're people who make mistakes, then they try and cover up the mistakes, and then they can't come back because they've gone further than a mistake and they've moved into the realms of criminality. And it's that they've got you. So that is interesting, and it's interesting to explore, and I will continue to explore it, because corruption is an ongoing theme in this series. I mean, people are saying, I think it was, God love him, Ian Rankin said, think of Reacher fronting Line of Duty. Corruption plays a part. I am trying to have that sort of Scottish anti-corruption angle because it's interesting and it's current, and I think people want to read about it as well.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think the way it's portrayed in the novel is really kind of smart and clever. That it's not just, the gangland people aren't just fists and bullets, either. They're also suits and ties, and that comes across really, really strongly. The novel, though, itself, Ben Man's Grave, has been longlisted for the McIlvenney Prize, which it's only currently out in ebook. So, it's pretty amazing that one of the first novel with HarperCollins, and it's out in ebook at this stage, that it's been longlisted, hasn't it? So, is that kind of a confidence boost for you as a writer, as an outsider writing about Scotland? Is that kind of a sense that you're getting somewhere, do you think, that you're getting something right?
It's unbelievably flattering. It is a bit intimidating. I was confident the book was good.
Yeah,
I was. I read it and I sat down at the end of it and I think this is a good book. And we rack with self-doubt and imposter syndrome, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was a good book. And my publisher said, look, we're going to put you in for the McIlvenney. And I thought, yeah, whatever. I love Bloody Scotland. I absolutely love it. It's just a wonderful festival. I owe so much to Bloody Scotland because a couple of years ago I was a spotlighter there. Before that, I went and did the masterclass at Bloody Scotland, where a whole day's worth of input, lessons and lectures and panels with authors, publishers, and so it was really valuable to me. And then the year after that, when I managed to get a deal with a small publisher, I spoke. I did the spotlight before Lynn Anderson and Alex Gray, and Lynn's been a huge supporter of me. Lynn, I love Lynn to bits. She's read all my books and she'll champion my books and told everybody how much she loves them. So I owe a huge amount to Bloody Scotland, and it really made me feel. I think it gave me the confidence to say, you know what? I'm not Scottish. I'm an Englishman. I'll never be Scottish. I can't make myself Scottish, but I think I can call myself a Scottish crime writer now because I'm living in Scotland. My kids go to school in Scotland. My wife works in social services in Scotland, and now I'm writing about Scottish themes, Scottish books in Scotland. And so I think I can call myself a Scottish crime writer, even if I still am an Englishman. So I owe a great deal to Bloody Scotland, and to then obviously be entered, that was nice. But then to get that phone call from Bob McDevitt saying, Neil, we've longlisted you, it's just a dream come true, Yeah. And it gives you the confidence to keep going and to keep moving and to think and to perhaps be braver take a few more risks, write about some things you may not have written about, and see where you can take this series. Where can I take this book? Because, you know, I've been really lucky that quite a few people have read it. Quite a few other authors have read it, and they've said nice things about it. And that then gives you confidence to think, well, maybe this is a good book. Maybe I can write. And yeah, so it's been huge. It's been huge for me. And, you know, it gives my publishers confidence.
Yeah,
it gives them confidence to say, well, maybe we'll do some hardbacks with this, and maybe they'll, you know, get their shoulder really behind it. And, you know, it seems to be working. So just keep my fingers crossed that things go.
So what's next for Max? Because book 2's not that far behind, is it? Essentially, it'll be out.
No, the next book is called The Blood. It's out in February. It's called The Blood Tide. Again, it starts with a small town mystery up at Loch Torridon, up on the west coast and the northwest coast of Scotland, where a fisherman goes missing. And the question is why. And I don't really want to give any spoilers out. But the next thing is that a uniformed police officer comes across a guy who then jumps off the Erskine Bridge in Glasgow. They then link these two cases together, and then they begin investigating, and there's a lot more to be uncovered, and there's a lot more themes. And that's all I'll say about that one. But that's going to be out in February. It's up for pre-order at the moment. The cover's not even finalised on that one. And I've just got I've done the line edit on that, so I'm expecting those back soon. There'll be copy edits. So that's getting towards being there. And the third one is written, and it's sitting in my editor's inbox. But
Your work ethic shames us all.
Well, I know, you know, he basically told me to slow down because he needs a bit of time to catch up. And I've got an idea for a fourth one if they want it. So,
brilliant.
So yeah, no, it's really going well. It's really exciting, and you know, I'm very, very happy to be in the situation I am. You know, I didn't dream that I'd leave the cops. I came up here with no plans to. I was just going to come up here and see where life took me, and I just sort of started writing one day to see if I could. And you know, here I am, 4 books published down, 2 more to come, and at least. And it's been great fun, and I'm really thankful, and I still pinch myself every day that I'm doing this for kind of a living, you know.
Fantastic, brilliant. I think that's a brilliant note to finish on. So, Dead Man's Grave is out now. If the hardback's about to appear any day now after this interview, so go out and grab it, ebook, and we'll see what happens with the McIlvanney. Best of luck, Neil. Speak to you soon.
Thank you, Nick.
Cheers. Thank you very much.